Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug. And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is your first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Woo. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. Mm-hmm. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you better make the most of it. Let's do a show.
Hurrah!
Well, Uncle Dan.
Yes, sir.
Another show, another week.
Here it comes, down the pike.
A day in the life of the heretic.
Yeah.
We have a very lady-centric show this week.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about what is OG. O-L.
The O-est of G's.
The O-est of G's.
Literally, you don't get O-er than this G.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
So this is a complex character.
Love it.
Yeah, she's a lady, she's an owl, she's everything.
And I'm going to take us into a ghost story. The spookiest of ghost stories that turns into something way bigger than it needed to turn into.
Got a little out of control, I think.
It went a little off the rails.
And then when we're done with that, we're going to have an interview with our friend Tori Williams Douglass.
Yes. Tori, which name you have severe trouble with.
I have that's a tongue twister for me. So
it's fine. It's fine. She'll be able to say her own name. So we'll have a conversation with her. A very fascinating conversation. It is a how-to that you were not going to want to miss.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make you wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's good.
And that's a very good thing.
Yeah,
Trust us.
It's a good thing. So let's do it.
Let's do the show. Hey, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
You know, I like music festivals.
Do you?
And there's this one that I go to...
Cocktober.
You never...
It's Cocktoberfest.
That's the other one.
Yeah, that's actually not musical.
No.
But sometimes songs break out.
In a way, yeah.
But Uncle
it's
Mark,
rhythmic.
You're going to tell us all about the origins of one of the best music festivals. That's her only real claim to fame, right? That she's got a music festival named after her?
Well, I think you'll see why she has a music festival named after her, because we're going to talk today about somebody called Lilith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear she's fair.
Not according to the texts.
Oh, okay.
But she's cool. So, you know, we tend to shoehorn a lot of these things we talk about into different segments.
Sure.
And I would say Lilith is transsegmental.
Oh,
so
very progressive.
She's kind of Graveyard of the Gods. She's kind of Garden of the Gods. She's kind of Bible story. She's kind of she's a very complex
We don't know who
figure.
she is.
So I'm going to just ask anybody out there who's familiar with Lilith to go easy on me, because there are so many fucking ways to approach this subject that I just had to pick a thread.
Yeah, I get it, because like when I first heard of this character,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she sounds interesting, and I jumped to the Bible to try and find her, and guess what I didn't find?
She's there, she's just not where she's famous for being.
Right.
So it's even more complicated, but
Yeah, I was tricked.
we will follow what breadcrumbs there are
Okay.
to find.
It's a Bloodhound Gang scenario.
Whenever there's trouble, we're there on the double. We're the Lilith gang. So, as I said, she's a little complicated.
Sure.
She is not mentioned by name in Genesis.
Okay.
But she has become, over the millennia, very associated with the first of the two almost directly adjoining human creation stories.
Right.
So if you recall, Dan, you talked about in episode 47 that there are indeed two creation stories explaining human origins in Genesis.
And they like to argue with each other.
And as Ken Ham says, all the answers are in Genesis.
Right.
So let us find the answer. In the first story, at least in the King James Version,
That's the only version.
that's right, Doug's very partial.
Mark left the space open, and then Doug almost didn't do his
The
job.
King James version, you can go to hell.
So in the King James Version, Genesis 1, verse 27, God made both an unnamed male and female at the same time, fully formed.
Right.
Though they're still not named, they do have consciousness because he gives them a long list about being fruitful and multiplying and about all the amazing shit they can eat and dominate, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. He just went, and then there were people.
And they're just standing there like getting this, holy shit, I exist, and now here's a list of whales.
Yeah.
Just here's seeds.
Here's your fucking rules.
Right.
God damn it.
Give me a second. Jesus Christ.
I don't even, I just existed now.
Hold on, I was just checking out all these floppy bits. What are you talking about? Who are you? So then, just a few hundred words later, and I mean literally just a few hundred words later, in Genesis 2, verse 7, he makes a man again, as if he never made one to begin with. Here's that verse, Genesis 2, 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. The man became a living soul.
A dirt monster.
He's a dirt person. They're still around. Oddly, and totally clumsily, it isn't until verse 19, for some reason, that we find out this guy is named Adam. And Adam is so just inserted. The word it just suddenly appears. If you weren't paying attention, which nobody is when they're reading Genesis, you would think it's just somebody else entirely, right? So, okay, whatever.
Unless you, except for the fact that we are all keenly aware of this story and someone has filled in that blank for
Right.
us.
We know there's no other guy but him at that moment. So, whatever. So God decides it's good for man not to be alone. And somehow seems unaware of his own grand design for how the life he made to be fruitful and gets to multiplying. It's super weird. So it's like he doesn't understand you're supposed to have a woman suddenly.
Right.
I mean, so, and maybe it was going to be Adam and Steve for a minute.
Yeah, he was making up his mind.
It's a really, it's a big, flaky piece of shit piece of narrative right there. And so he says, anyway, he says he's going to make Adam, and I hate this term, and it's an in the Bible, an helpmeet.
I know. I love that.
An helpmeet. But not before Adam gets to name all the animals and shit. So this weird naming, God is actually showing him all the animals as if they would be good helpmeets.
Right.
Oh,
So again, forgetting his own design of how copulation and reproduction works.
Right.
What about this?
Look, we don't know what was between Adam's legs at that moment.
Right,
That could have been TBD.
A stamen.
Until he picks which animal he wants to be fucking.
It's like
for
he's showing you,
eternity.
what about this squirrel? What about this melon?
Do you like my cow? What do you think
What
of him?
about this banana tree?
Well, and I love how he named everything. Oh, that's an elephant. That's a giraffe, and not just that's a.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I mean, we don't know. The Adamic language is one that only those who are truly in touch with the Lord can now speak.
Right, that's
Which,
speaking
by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this, Mormons claim that sometimes, every now and then, someone will speak in the Adamic language.
Yeah.
Mormons do have speaking in tongues, just not. It's very, very, very rare.
Have you ever heard anybody do that?
No. But I've heard legends of Mormons doing.
I mean, I have heard rural Utah Mormon accents that I thought could be that. But
Apparently, the Adamic language is you add a diphthong to every syllable.
right, unless you just need to change creek to crick or whatever. And then
so anyway, he
Yeah.
shows him all the things, and for some reason, God doesn't know how man and woman work. I don't know. It's so fucking weird. So finally, they realize that of all the beasts of the field and the creatures of the sea and the thing and the thing and the thing, none of them are suitable.
he doesn't want to fuck any of them.
He probably tried and nothing
I was going
happened.
to say maybe he did.
Yeah.
He just didn't go anywhere.
It was a weird father-son outing. So none of these are suitable. So then we get the first ever rollout of the McRib. And God performs the first surgery ever recorded under anesthesia. And then boom, woman.
Right.
So it is a giant mess. We could go on and on because there really is nothing as fun as beating up on Genesis. It's just too easy. But the point of all this is
Where all of the answers are wrong.
where Ken Ham finds all of life's answers and wonders why
Why they don't line up
his
with any kind
giant
of reality.
shitty boat in an empty parking lot is going bankrupt. So anyway, the point of it all this is what happened to that first woman and really the man, because they just kind of unhappened. I suspect the author wanted a little more magical razzmatazz with the dirt and the blowing in the nostrils and the McRib. So, rewrite all you want, guy. Just remember to delete the first draft, for fuck's sake. So, anyway, ancient rabbis noticed this dumb discrepancy when what's referred to as the priestly version of the story, Genesis 1, and the Yahwistic version of the story, Genesis 2,
God, shut up.
were combined to create the first book of the Torah. So there were competing versions of the same story.
Right.
So rather than just pick one, they tried to
Right.
meld them all together.
That is exactly how the prequels happened.
This is why you don't let a bunch of rabbis in a room talk about things for 100 years.
For very long.
Bad things happen.
So the workaround for this was the creation of a first wife for Adam. There was also the idea that the first man and woman were an androgyne, a creature both male and female that was then split in two. Another idea was...
I remember that. That's from Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Totally
most
from Hedwig
definitely
and the
is,
Angry
yeah.
Inch. And then the idea that there were two Eves, or that Eve and Lilith are the same person in two guises. And as we'll see, that makes a certain amount of sense because throughout the long, strange path of Lilith, like the sinful Eve, she revolves around a curse. So, and in Lilith's case, it's many curses. So the earliest known record of any Lilith comes from an old friend, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
What?
I know. We keep coming back to this. Fucking pulling me back. Except it's not the deeply antiquated one we discussed in which we found Utnapishtim, the original Noah. Rather, this comes from a later Akkadian translation around 2000 BCE that had taken some poetic license with the story. So,
Those fucking Akkadians. Always just messing with your stories.
I guess the word plagiarism had not been invented yet. So,
Right.
So in this version of the story, Inanna, the goddess of love and lust, among other things, has a hulupu tree growing in her sacred garden. No, it's a patch of land. It's nothing dirty. In Uruk, that she's planning to use to build a new throne. After 10 years, she goes to harvest it, and it's inhabited by a snake, a nesting bird, and a female spirit, and I'm going to kill this. I'm going to nail this name, called the Ki Sikil Lil Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we're
remember
all
that.
That's
familiar
correct.
with.
That's
We
correct.
we all know that one.
Doug said, yes, that's correct. Good. Proceed.
I'm going to allow it.
And according to scholars, this is indeed the first appearance of Lilith. So here's some of the text as translated by somebody. Inanna, to her chagrin, found herself unable to realize her hopes. For in the meantime, a dragon had set up its nest at the base of the tree. The zoo bird had placed his young in the crown, and in the midst, the demoness Lilith had built her house.
Wow.
So there you
So
go.
she lived in a tree.
She lived in a tree, as
you do.
as demonesses are wont to do.
Sure. Why not?
And owls, and you'll see. I'm going to connect to owls in a second. So Gilgamesh
Was
kills.
this a greater or a lesser owl?
Oh, he's a greater owl.
Okay.
For sure. So Gilgamesh kills the serpent in service of Inanna. The nesting bird flies off to the mountains with their young, and the female spirit ruins her treehouse and runs away to the desert. From this, she has become, this is Lilith, she's become associated with trees and nature, and for some reason, owls. So it's a commonly used symbol when discussing Lilith.
Okay.
So,
Also, commonly used symbol for the restaurant chain Hooters. So
yes.
Yeah,
I feel
there
like
you go.
we've made that connection.
Well, you
now.
ruined the whole ending of the story.
Ah, shit.
Yes.
Lilith with her tits out asking you how many wings you want.
In that story, the girl's name is Ecstasy.
So there's other evidences for Lilith's mythical existence. The Arslan Tash amulets date from the 7th century BCE and were to be used to protect oneself from the demonic presence of Lilith, but who by this time had become associated with causing miscarriages in pregnant women and motivating sleeping young men to spill their seed.
Oh, she's turned into a mean lady.
Well, I don't know. If you,
I mean, a nocturnal emission's not the worst thing in the world.
No.
but if you want to keep your baby around, that sounds sad.
Wet dreams have to have a patron saint.
I guess so.
somebody's got, hey, it's a job. Somebody's
Yeah.
got to fill. So,
Oh, I dreamed of an owl last night, and suddenly my pants were sticky.
So here's the spooky text from one of the amulets for protecting a pregnancy. Oh, you who fly in the darkened rooms, be off with you this instant, Lilith, thief, breaker of bones.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so Lilith clearly
Get
has
yourself an amulet, everybody.
Lilith has many faces. So now she does make a singular appearance in the Bible.
Yeah.
Recall in episode 45 of our show, we talked about how the Bible, life's greatest and only guide to all things, most especially monotheism, is full of gods and demons.
Sure.
Well, Lilith shows up in Isaiah 34:14 in a passage dealing with the desolation of the kingdom of Edom. And I quote from Isaiah, "Her nobles shall be no more, nor shall kings be proclaimed there. All her princes are gone. Her castles shall be overgrown with thorns, her fortresses with thistles and briars. She shall become an abode for jackals and a haunt for ostriches."
I'm being haunted by ostriches.
If you think about it, it'd be pretty fucking scary. Birds should not be that big.
It's true.
So
That is a fact.
Continuing, wildcats shall meet with desert beasts. Satyrs shall call to one another. There shall the Lilith repose and find for herself a place of rest.
Oh, she's named in the Bible. I didn't know that.
She's named in the Bible because, remember, the Bible is drawn from all these other sources.
Yeah.
So
like terrifying giant birds, she's a haint.
she's a haint. So that's another peek at Lilith. So she's transformed into a full-on demon or dark force of nature at this point. In the case of Adam and Eve, as is almost always the case, and Uncle Dan, you can attest to this, your second marriage really is the best one. Good just to get the first one out of the way.
The first one's a trial run. You crash and burn that one. That's
right.
Bound to happen.
You can't get divorced until you get married.
That's the Lord's own truth right there.
The circle of life. So she appears again in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Song of the Sage.
Oh.
And here on the How To Heretic is our first but hardly our last dramatic reading of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes, please.
"And I, the instructor, proclaim his glorious splendor so as to frighten and to terrify all the spirits of the destroying angels, spirits of the bastards, demons, Lilith, howlers and desert dwellers." Poor Lilith, man. And she's the only one with a fucking name in all
It's like
of
an
this.
ex-girlfriend of his.
"And those which fall upon men without warning, to lead them astray from a spirit of understanding, and to make their heart desolate during the present dominion of wickedness and predetermined time of humiliations for the sons of light, by the guilt of the ages of those smitten by iniquity, not for eternal destruction, but for an era of humiliation for transgression."
Boy.
And in case you were wondering, that was a big shouty paragraph about masturbation and infidelity. The fucking obsession with this theme in the ancient texts is like exhausting.
Oh my God. It's so funny. I mean, it sounds to me like because what we know of the Bible is that it is a hodgepodge of mythology from all around the region, from Egypt to Samaria to like all that whole region.
Yeah.
And people just gathered stories and pieced them together in ways that made sense to them.
Right. And some sage said, "Oh, this is my story." And it wasn't his story. It was somebody else's story.
Yeah. And so, this Lilith was from 8 different stories.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they just, whatever.
Yeah, we need a bitch to pin all this stuff on.
Right.
What's her name? Lilith. Man. So, and here's another appearance she makes, which I think is fascinating. She or they, her nature seems to drift between a singular being and a class of demons or nature, spirits, depending on the source. She appears on something called incantation bowls.
Which was actually, I think, Simon Cowell's first show.
It's a little known classic.
Sorry, Lilith, it's a no for me.
These things were unearthed in the ruins of the 4th to 6th century CE Sassanid kingdom, which was a last gasp fragment of the Persian Empire. And they're actual bowls from a particular Jewish occult tradition that were buried upside down in houses to trap demons.
Okay.
So the following inscription was found on a bowl made to protect a woman named Rashnoi and her husband from Lilith.
Oh.
"Thou Liliths made male Ili and female Lilith, hag and ghoul, I adjure you," hag, for fuck's sake. Guys, "I adjure you by the strong one of Abraham, by the rock of Isaac, by the Shaddai of Jacob, by Yah Hashem, by Yah his memorial, to turn away from Rashnoi B and from Geonai B, her husband, Here is your divorce and writ and letter of separation sent through holy angels. Amen, amen, Shella, hallelujah.
Okay.
Well, frankly, it sounds legal to me.
Okay, this is either a very large bowl or very tiny writing.
And I've seen a picture of the bowl, and I'm like, oh, what does Lilith look like? And Lilith looks like a little Halloween character animation going, ah! Like with her arms up and like a little jack-o'-lantern head. I'm like, you guys are scared of that? That's a trick-or-treater.
I just love that the solution was a bowl.
Right.
Just bury a bowl.
There we go. Done and done.
But here's where Lilith truly becomes whole as a character, and why I think she inspires modern feminism and religious, mostly female religious iconoclasts throughout the ages. This appearance comes from a strange medieval book of Jewish lore from an anonymous author called The Alphabet of Ben Sira. It's a book of 22 tales, each corresponding to a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Lilith appears in the 5th tale. She's still somewhat demonic, associated with night and flying, but she's fully introduced as Adam's first wife.
Interesting.
And this, as much as the half-assed early rabbinic workaround for the mess of Genesis, is likely how the idea has leaked into the collective consciousness of Western humanity. So in the Alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith is made alongside Adam, as in Genesis 1, but soon the first couple begin to bicker because Lilith does not like being on the bottom during sexy time, as Adam commands. And this is from like 700 CE, so this is still an early work.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting that there was this idea. He insists she be subservient. She's not fucking having it. The Earth is like 9 days old, and already men are trying to put women, or in this case, woman, as there's only one, in their place. So she tells them they're equal because they're both made from the same earth,
right?
As in Genesis 1. And the fighting gets so bad, she does the absolutely unthinkable. She pronounces the true name of God.
Whoa.
Now, we all know about the prohibition about taking the Lord's name in vain in the 3rd commandment, but especially in Jewish theology, this bears all kinds of magical consequences.
Yeah, they don't even get to write it. They don't.
No, and it's said in the old, Solomon's Temple or whatever, it was said once a year,
right?
On a specific holiday.
So they got into an argument, and she's like, "I'm going to say it." He's like, "Don't you dare!
Don't you say it!"
Oh yeah.
So it's a transgression greater even than eating oysters on your period on the Sabbath, on the threshold of the tabernacle, naked from the waist up, but wearing a cotton poly-blend skirt below.
Yeah.
If you can believe that. So she is thus unworthy to live in paradise, and obviously granted the power to fly the fuck out of there, which she does.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
There's then this whole thing where she goes to hang out by the Red Sea, and somehow without male contribution poops out loads of babies every day. God curses her to have 100 of those babies killed daily.
Oh, what?
Yeah, so she's having more than 100 a day.
Oh my God.
Good Lord.
Yeah, what a week. And then 3 angels show up to try to drag her back to Eden, which she's allowed a second chance to be taken back to Eden. She refuses, vowing revenge on God and Adam for killing her babies. She pledges vengeance on mortal babies going forward, blah, blah, blah. It just kind of gets out of control from there.
Damn. That's hardcore.
It's pretty hardcore. So here's the whole point of the Lilith story in this crazy book. Despite her being spun as a villain, she's really the female character. She's really a female character being unwilling to take men's shit.
Yeah.
And willing to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
So if she has to be a tree spirit or a masturbation fairy or a baby murderer or even just a fucking owl, so be it. Even in the event of being given a second chance to return and submit, she argues forcefully against the angels and tells them to fuck off. So I think that's why she continues to inspire people like our friend Sarah McLachlan to use her as a symbol for feminine defiance for a women's music festival. And that's why she's the original vampire in the Anne Rice universe and in the True Blood universe. And why she shows up in romantic literature. The Bible and other ancient texts really give women precious few heroes.
Right.
And despite having to dress Lilith up as a monster, she shines through as a woman who was sick of people's shit, and man's shit. So,
and that point of we're the same because we're made of the same stuff is perfect.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. She was made at the same time as him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you so special,
I want to be on top.
boy?
Yeah, and a lot of this is kind of backfilling just these fragments of a story.
It's all backfilling.
Right.
This is all. I mean, she's not in the Bible except in that thing as a demon. Mm-hmm. She's not a character in the Bible. She's
not
just
really.
sort of a basic ostrich demon.
But it's kind of I don't know. It's into those gaps that the Bible is full of.
Right.
All kinds of stuff like this can fill in the blanks. You
Sure.
know, the mess between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. And so she was pitched very early on. She was pitched, you know, in the early days of kind of codifying the Bible. So I think we could do worse for a first woman.
Sure.
Than Lilith, right?
And if there's a moral to the story, switch it up during sex or a bunch of babies are going to die.
I also love the fact, here's my other objection, and I'll leave it at like this, is that Lilith Fair, if you're going to name a music festival after this woman, it better be metal as fuck.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So it can't just be Jewel.
No.
The Indigo Girls. I'm not making any presumptions.
There's anything wrong with that.
Not there's anything wrong with that. So, anyway, I don't think we're going to bury her back. I think we're just going to let her fly.
There you go.
Leave her out.
All right, let's move on from Lilith. Uncle Doug,
Uncle Mark.
why are you wearing that sheet?
Well, various reasons.
Are you going to meet Jeff Sessions, or are you trying to give me a fright?
It can be both things.
Yeah. Well, it's a good look for you.
Thank you.
The ponchos and caftans are very forgiving.
Yeah, muumuus are very slimming.
Yeah. Well, I don't know they're slimming, but they're comfortable.
Yeah.
After you've settled and given up at a certain age, what you want is comfort.
Right.
But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No.
Uncle Dan has apparently something a little spooky.
Ooh, you guys, it is mid-October.
Yes.
As we speak. And I thought that was the perfect time
Yeah.
for a spooky ghost story.
Ooh.
All right.
So, traditionally, ghost stories, not my favorite thing. I am not a fan of scary movies. I don't like haunted houses, mostly because I just really don't like being startled. But
You don't like horror movies?
no, I hate them. I like suspense thrillers,
Okay.
but like I don't like jumpy out. Jump scares are like the cheapest, stupidest thing in the world to me.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
And I hate being startled.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Boo.
Damn it! I gotcha! Damn it! Damn it! Okay, but I will say this: I have several friends who not only like ghost stories, they fervently believe in ghosts, and they've seen and heard evidence of them. I know people who have invested hundreds of dollars in ghost hunting equipment. Go out into the
You know
world.
people?
I do.
That do this?
Yeah, they go out into the world in hopes of finding a spirit with whom to communicate.
Getting the ectoplasmic thing.
Yeah, sure. They haven't quite invested in the in the
Egon.
proton
Yeah.
What is that thing?
packs or whatever they are.
I'm afraid of no ghost.
But yeah, I mean the little things that that they have the cameras that are specially tuned so that they can see the orbs in
Right.
the pictures, and they got the audio equipment that picks up on the whispers and the whatever.
And they got that, what's it called? Photoshop.
Yeah,
Right.
That's pretty useful.
Yeah.
That's probably the most useful part.
You can find a lot of ghosts via Photoshop.
But I will tell you this: ghost hunting and attempts to communicate with the other side, Look, it wasn't always a thing. People have always, feared all manner of demons and hoped for all manner of angels for millennia.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until fairly recently in human history that people started believing that they could communicate with spirits of people who had passed through to the other side.
Right.
Well, I'm going to take you to the ghost story that started it all.
Ooh.
Picture this. You're an upstanding woman in your community of Hydesville, New York, walking home on an evening in late March 1848, when two little neighbor girls, Maggie and Kate Fox, ages 15 and 11 or 12, respectively, approach you and ask you to come to their house. They say that they're scared, and so is their mother. You see, something's knocking on the walls and furniture of their home, and it's communicating with them.
Well, I think what the answer is just no.
Anytime two creepy young girls ask you to go somewhere with them, you'd say no.
Because the furniture's sliding around the house?
Yeah, exactly. Have you
I'm
not
good.
seen The Shining?
Yeah.
But they hadn't seen The Shining. That's the point.
Call an exterminator.
This was
Bye.
a new phenomenon. Skeptical, you go with them back to their home, and as you walk, the girls explain that every night, right around bedtime, they start to hear the knocks. For a while, they just assumed that it was the creaks and pops that are normal to any home, but the persistence of the rapping was different. It was as if something was trying to communicate with them. When you finally arrive at their tiny house, the mother takes you to the bedroom that the whole family share and tells the girls to speak to the ghosts. First, Kate asks the ghost to repeat the snaps with her fingers. She snaps. The ghost knocks. Then they ask the ghost to tap out the ages of the girls. It does. Count 5, the mother says, and sure enough, 5 knocks echo through the room. Count 15, she commands, which seems like a really high number to make a ghost tap out.
Number-based ghost.
But whatever. This is the 1840s.
Just give him like the quadratic equation
People were
while he's
bored.
doing that.
That's
get
right.
the fuck out. Yeah.
That's right. Tap out pi. Just as before, the spirit knocks 15 times. Demonstrations continued for other people in the town, and the fame of the Fox family grew. The girls originally called their intruder Mr. Splitfoot, which was a reference to the devil. He had cloven hooves. But they eventually determined, through knocking, that this was the ghost of a peddler by the name of Charles B. Rosna, who had been murdered on that property and buried in the cellar.
Oh.
Who knew? How did they know that?
Well, through the knocking, they would ask questions. This is a very Ouija board sort of scenario.
Did they develop like a Morse code sort of?
Yeah, it knocked 3 times for yes and 17 times for no.
Knock 29 times if you were a peddler. Right. If you were a longshoreman, knock 63 times.
For Spanish, knock twice. Oprima la número 2. In all the hubbub and the terror, the girls were eventually sent to nearby Rochester to live with their older siblings. Kate sent to live with her sister Leah. Maggie sent to live with her brother David. Upon settling into their new digs, however, it became clear that at least in their cases, the medium was the message. Get it? Medium? The mediums?
Yeah.
You guys see where I went there?
Yeah, we got it.
Did you,
Yeah, no.
I made a play on words, is
yeah,
what I'm saying.
got it.
Okay. Both girls quickly had incidents of knocking in the new houses.
So Mr. Splitfoot.
Split 1 foot each, or half of a foot to each person.
That's the nicest name for the devil ever.
Right, I like
Mr.
it.
Splitfoot.
It seems like there
should be a song.
should be a children's television show.
Yeah, it's like a local daytime
Mr.
children's
Splitfoot
television
comes
show.
to visit.
Sugarfoot.
Anywho.
You never see him. He just knocks through the whole show.
God damn it. Will you just talk to us? So word got out about these remarkable little girls to whom the dead seemed determined to communicate. I mean, seriously, dead people. Little girls, they're creepy enough as they are. Just leave them the fuck alone. But no, the dead people were talking to the little girls. 2 friends of the Fox family, Amy and Isaac Post, a couple of Quakers, by the way, invited the girls into their home. Isaac
Is this like a Quaker version of The Exorcist? Because I am there for it.
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You exorcise the ghost by hours of quiet contemplation.
Yeah, something like
The
that.
Quakercist.
And a little bit of shaking. And oats. Lots and lots of oats.
Throwing oats at her. The power of Christ compels you.
The power of Christ compels you, but you don't have to.
But don't
That's
worry.
the thing. It's all about free agency.
We're all friends here.
Yes.
We're a
We're
society
not going to force
of
you into
friends.
anything.
Yeah. Here's what Isaac wrote about the incident. I suppose I went with as much unbelief as Thomas felt when he was introduced to Jesus after he ascended. But damned if he wasn't convinced by, quote, very distinct thumps under the floor and several apparent answers. So, if Isaac Post can be convinced, surely something real is happening here.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt Isaac posted on
No, why
a
would
month
you?
of Sundays.
Not a good Quaker like him?
No, never.
Well, the Post went to all of their Quaker friends, and pretty soon there was a core group of people that were convinced that the veil between the living and the dead was semi-permeable, and that these pre-adolescents were the key to the communication with the other world. The girls gave more and more demonstrations of their powers.
You know what this is interesting because this is the first time, I think, and maybe the last ever in any religious history that there has been some obsession with the magical powers of virginal girls.
Yeah, nobody's ever heard of that.
Yeah, that's weird. It's
Until now.
the first. Let me write that on the board.
Get that in there.
Our big board of religious firsts. That's our first entry.
It's weird. Yeah, that's been blank for a long time.
Very blank.
So their older sister now joins them. Suddenly, she has the power as well.
Oh.
And they finally, the stories have grown to such have become so compelling that on November 14th, 1849, a crowd of spectators paid to witness this spectacle for themselves at Rochester's Corinthian Hall. And thus was launched the storied and often very profitable phenomenon of spiritualism.
Mm-hmm.
This is the beginning
Yeah.
of that.
When was this?
1840s.
1840s
is when it began and continued and prospered even through until this very day.
But the late 19th century was like the heyday, right?
Well, it won't be lost on you fellows that what was it? Their hometown of Hydesville, New York, was some 8 miles away from another town called Syracuse, New York. Not Syracuse, Palmyra,
New York. Yeah.
We are talking about the burned over district.
Yep.
We are the Finger Lakes region of New York State,
Yeah.
where Mormonism was born, where Seventh-day Adventism was born, where all of this shit just it was just a hotbed for...
It was in the soil. It was just something.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a gas leak somewhere.
I'd love to read more deeply on, because I know that was the phenomenon, but I haven't really read a lot about the kind of social, economic, religious circumstances that lent to such a one area being so fervently bananas.
I think the quick and dirty is that there were a lot of stupid people in that area at that time. But
got news for you. A lot of stupid people in all of the areas all of the time.
The Finger Lakes was known for a very stupid group of people.
Right. But on the
Credulous dopes.
on the continuum, there is always a dumbest place on earth. That was it.
Oh, find that, and if you're willing to say lies, the world is your oyster.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the birth. They went on to do to have successful careers as mediums. They went to New York City eventually, and did seances for.
Went on the Letterman show.
They did.
Yeah.
They went on the equivalent, which was the newspapers. The one I literally what's his name? Horace Greeley.
Yeah.
Who was a big newspaper man at the time.
Yeah.
Huge proponent of these girls.
Beautiful beard.
Yes, neck beard that came out from like a nice fluffy neck beard. You
Yeah.
always love that.
Wonderful.
Clean shaven cheeks, but a lovely fluff from like. It kind of looked like a Shakespearean ruff, only made of beard hair.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice look.
But yeah, he was a huge proponent of them and talked about them in his papers and stuff. Other papers were more skeptical, called them the weird knockers of Rochester or whatever. But but literally, like William Cullen Bryant, George Bancroft, James Fenimore Cooper, Nathaniel Parker Willis, Sojourner Truth, William Lloyd Garrison. All of these people went to their seances, were entirely, maybe entirely convinced. What's his name? Sherlock Holmes guy.
Conan Doyle.
Yeah.
Conan Doyle was a big fan, wrote about them, talked about them. They convinced people.
Yeah, well, and there again, we've talked about this with the Enlightenment and, your Isaac Newtons and Edward Halley's and stuff like that. You can be both, depending on what time and place you are, you can be both an incredibly brilliant mind and kind of a credulous idiot.
I give you one Ben Carson, for example.
Well, let me tell you something. The phenomenon that these girls exhibited was legit. They'd go into a room that they had never been in before, that they could not have prepped. They would speak to the ghosts, and this knocking would happen. Huh. This is legit.
So wait, this was never debunked. They never found old man Splitfoot downstairs, and he was just a peddler that was still alive, knocking on the floorboards.
Correct. That did not happen. What did happen was that the girls later, for a fee, recanted and explained the mechanism by which these ghosts... Oh, we're ruining it now. Oh, it was such a good spooky story.
But this is what we do on this show, is ruin all of our childhood fantasies.
Let me tell you something. Everyone that you know who believes in the Long Island medium, everyone that you know who believes in psychic communication with the other side, can trace a lineage back directly to two little girls who figured out a trick that made their toes make a sound.
It was their toes.
They had figured out a trick to work the toe muscles.
You mean like cracking a knuckle?
Essentially, it's not cracking a knuckle because you can do that once and then you can't do it again.
Right.
They found a way to like make the tendon pop or something, and they convinced a country full of people.
Wow.
That they were talking to the other side.
So sorry. These questions of like, do it 15 times.
Yeah.
Do it 27 times.
I'll do it as many times as you want me to.
I got split foot right now.
You get a bad case of split foot.
How come every time you talk to that guy, you need to ice your toe? I don't know. It's weird.
Shut your face. That's how come.
Ectoplasm. Fuck off.
So when they recanted, obviously that was the end of that, right?
Clearly, everyone who believed them previous said, "Ha ha, good trick," and it was all over. Or, as we now know from every story we've ever told on this show, nope, everyone just kept the fuck on believing them. In fact, they were so adamant that they pressured one of the girls back into recanting her recantment.
To de-recant.
She canted.
She canted. She re-recanted. And she
decanted.
These girls died penniless paupers.
Oh.
Because the world that had embraced them, that they had created,
right,
rejected them, but they kept on believing. Because let me tell you something. Thousands of copycats popped up,
right?
And as Eli would be able to tell us, who's not only an amazing podcaster but also a mentalist, and someone who has studied the dark arts, meaning trickery.
Right.
There's lots of good ways to fool people, into believing that you're talking to the dead, and those ways were just honed and refined over the years. But yeah, these girls who started it as a prank. By the way, I said it was late March. March 31st. Guess what next day was?
April Fool's Day.
Boom.
Oh.
This was an April Fool's joke taken too far.
No kidding. Huh.
Well, you know what? It's the fact that they recanted and then lost everything, and then people just went unbelievable. I mean, that's basically the plot of The Life of Brian, right? I mean, they're just once you start people believing a thing, get the fuck out of the way, because you either go with it or they're going to run right over you, and it's just going to go.
The Necronomicon and all of the other things that are made up, and people just refuse to stop believing in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, literally, people get trapped in a silly lie, and then that's their life forever now.
Yeah.
And, if they do it right, if they do it the way some of these people do it, LRH or whatever, they get rich because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. 150 years later, people are buying special cameras to find the dead.
Exactly.
And you know what those cameras will never find? A girlfriend.
Oh, would that were true.
Yeah, they don't.
I'll bet that's not true.
They don't work in Canada, apparently. So. Well, that's an awesome story.
Here's a quote from one of the girls. I didn't actually write down which quote. This is the harm that can come from this. They so convinced their little town that someone had been murdered in their house because that was the story they came up with. Forever now, they launched that idea. So forever now, we're stuck with fucking movies about, hauntings of people who were wronged in this life, being stuck in a house in the,
Poltergeist.
Yeah. All of this
Indian
shit.
burial grounds, that whole thing.
And the Conjuring universe.
This all comes from just like the imagination. By the way, is there anything creepier than little kids? They are the fucking creepiest. Ask any parent. I was talking to my friend about this, my dear friend Kate, who, she's a mother of 3. And she said, and, what brought this up was another mutual friend had posted on Facebook about her son coming to her and talking to her about these ghosts. Or, Mr. So-and-so who he had been talking to. And this woman had been encouraging this. And been saying, oh, my God, my son's a medium. My son's talking to the other side.
Great.
And, it was, terrifying to me because you're going to fuck up your child.
Right.
Yeah.
Because kids have fucking imaginations. And they just say shit. And they say creepy shit. And my friend Kate was talking about how her son had a good friend, Mr. Something, who lived in the crack in the mirror.
Holy shit.
How fucking creepy is
my
that?
skin crawl.
My, I have a buddy who has a little sister, and this is several years ago. She's quite a bit younger than him. And one day they were getting ready a big family dinner. They were making dinner, and they just couldn't find all the carving knives and stuff. Where the fuck are the knives? And so they're looking around the house. They're asking the kids, they're like, "Why would I take the knife? Why would I have to take the knife?" And they asked this little girl who was 8 or something at the time where the knives are, and she's like, "I don't know." And obviously it's yeah, we can tell where the knives are. So finally she takes them and shows them where the knives are, and she's hidden them in all the toilet tanks in the house. And they're like, "Babe, why would you do this? Why would you hide these knives?" And she goes, "They're for Bloody Mary."
That's it. I'm shipping her off to an orphanage.
That's right.
Changing my address.
You live with Uncle Joe now.
This is when you go, Peter Ustinov will give you 7 sacred daggers that were found under a foundation in Jerusalem, and you have to stab her.
Or in the toilet. Who knows?
That's right.
No,
I mean, my friend Kate also mentioned that she would wake up frequently with one of her 3 children standing at her bedside, just staring at her.
I was literally going to say, if you imagine waking up in the middle of the night and something standing in your doorway, what's creepier than a child?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there was a prank video that went around. I don't know if you guys saw this. This was sort of after the movie The Ring had come out and whatever. There's a prank video where the whole prank was they put hidden cameras in a hotel hallway, and then they put a girl with her hair, with long black hair,
Right. Yeah.
combed down, covering a lot of her face, just standing there. And people would round the corner and go, "Ah!" and run away. Run away from a little girl who was doing nothing.
Yeah, I think the point to take here is just be afraid of children.
Be afraid of children. So here's the quote that this is what came of this belief that these little girls had been communicating with a quote murdered spirit.
Yeah.
One of the girls said, she's referring to the neighbors in the town. They were convinced that someone had been murdered in the house. They asked the spirits through us about it, and we would rap out 1 for spirit answer yes, not 3 as we did afterward. Right. The murder was, they concluded, must have been committed in the house. They went over the whole surrounding county trying to get the names of the people who had formerly lived in the house. Finally, they found a man by the name of Bell, and they said that this poor innocent man had committed a murder in the house, and that the noises had come from the spirit of the murdered person. Poor Bell was shunned and looked upon by the whole community as a murderer.
Jesus. See? Be afraid of children.
On the word of 2 dopey kids who were just using their imagination.
Well, isn't that also how the Salem witch trials began?
Yes.
It's the word of fucking crazy children, right?
Yeah. One crazy child outing a bunch of
adult people.
And people got killed because of it.
Right.
We should do that. We'll save that for next October.
Yeah. Well, that was a bunch of crazy bullshit.
Yeah. It's terrifying. Don't just believe things. I think that's the answer. And ghosts aren't real.
And look, we don't want to affect a vital part of the U.S. economy, which is the ghost camera financial sector. But
/ Edward what James Edwards or whatever his name is. We don't want to take away all those good mediums.
We don't want to crush Split Foot Enterprises.
Yeah, but find another fucking hobby.
Right.
Chess is fun.
Yeah,
Bird watching is totally fine.
go get an ostrich.
If you believe in birds.
Yeah.
So anyway, love
There you
it.
go. Spooky times.
Let's move on. Well, Uncle Dan,
Yes, sir.
we're joined here with Uncle Doug,
Hello.
As we do.
which means our expenses have increased by a third.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Yeah,
And we're paying Doug double what we're paying ourselves.
which is almost
God
nothing.
damn.
Almost
right.
nothing.
But that largesse is made possible by the kindly folks on the other end of these microphones.
It's so true. Where are they? I keep looking on the other side of the mic. And
There's
I don't-
between them and us is a series of
a
tubes.
series of tubes.
Yes.
Look, this week we only got one new patron.
Yes.
I regret to say. But
However,
what a patron he is.
yes.
This is Jeff.
Now, now listen, Jeff is carrying a lot of your fucking asses loads out there, so let's all thank Jeff.
Well, we
Thank
have to
you, Jeff.
We have to thank Jeff. We owe him.
Yes.
In fact, he is of such largesse that he gets his own personalized heaven, which I have crafted for him. So I will launch into that.
Yes.
Look, Jeff, everybody's idea of heaven is different. Your hairstylist's likes and dislikes, dreams and desires are going to vary wildly from those of, say, a 5th century Buddhist monk. If you asked 1,000 people what their idea of eternal bliss might sound like, none of them are likely to line up exactly with your perfect forever, right? Well, too fucking bad, because your heaven, Jeff, is their heavens. All of them. Forever. That's right, you'll spend the eons whiling away the time, bouncing from one idea of heaven to the next, never really knowing what's around the corner, like Sam Beckett quantum leaping his way from one reality to another. You will find yourself forever ensconced in someone else's perfect story.
Wow.
Don't worry, most people's idea of heaven is great. You'll get to revel in the candy world of Sarah Hutchinson, a 7-year-old girl from Kentucky, where mountains are made of chocolate and the bears that live there are all gummy. And you'll likely love the relaxing beach time you'll get from the dreams of Ellen Eisenstein of Gimli, Manitoba, where the sun is perpetually setting over the ocean as a whale gently breaches in the distance, and the margaritas are always just a bit too strong, but they're served all day long by handsome, strapping young, quote, Latin men. Of course, there will be some less pleasant ones, like when you're thrown into the dark place, an eerily lit world filled with strange and often disturbing characters who all seem to feel a constant unease that you'll immediately also feel. Who are those creepy twins? Why doesn't that big lady talk? Does that dwarf know does that dwarf in the corner know something that he's not telling you? In David Lynch's heaven, yes. Yes, he does. Or there will be the time when you are the unequivocal ruler of the world, with sycophants constantly at your beck and call,
And
catering...
sycophants.
And sycophants and coelacanths, who knows? Catering to your every desire and constantly telling you how amazing you are at everything.
I like a coelacanth bringing me a cocktail. I love
Yes.
it.
Topless at that. Including sex, which you can have willy-nilly with anyone you like. Every now and then, you'll, of course, grow tired of someone who doesn't quite praise you enough or isn't as attractive as you'd like. That's fine. In this world, you just devise a brutal execution for them. The more sadistic, the better. And then you go back to feasting and fucking. Whose heaven is this? Genghis Khan? Kim Jong-un? A certain American candy corn with wispy coiffure? Indeed, interestingly, all of the above. And you'll spend an uncomfortable amount of time there. But don't worry, it's eternity, so you'll have plenty of time to try out all the amazing heavens. From the Dalai Lama's series of stark white rooms, to the perpetual Quidditch games of 36% of all millennials, to Shirley Temple's very surprising BDSM sex barn, complete with animals, we were shocked. You'll gain a unique insight into the warped and disgusting world that is your fellow human's deepest desires. Enjoy.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez, Jeff,
that
enjoy.
that might be the best eternity ever.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Also the worst. You never know.
Yeah.
But it's Jeff's.
It's very hard to know. It's a fine line between best and worst in the afterlife, isn't it?
In the world of eternities, who knows what's good?
Enjoy
what's good
that,
and what's
Jeff.
bad.
Jesus
Well, if
Christ.
anybody wants to join Jeff in a particular heaven, any one of those or any other one of your own,
We will craft one for you, personalize it to you.
if you just go to our website, which is howtoheretic.com, click on the Patreon link, and dump all of your family fortune into the box there where it says contribute.
Right. Or, and we should emphasize this, you can do a very little amount.
Yes.
And we'll accept that too and love you deeply for it.
$1 a week gets you Monday release rather than Wednesday release.
Yeah.
Be a Monday person.
Be a Monday person.
What a way to start your week.
But if you can't be a Monday person and you're fine with being a Wednesday person, maybe you can just go to iTunes or wherever you can rate the podcast.
Stitcher, a lot of people don't know you can rate us on Stitcher. You have to look around a little bit, but you can do it.
Easy enough. Go there, hit 5 stars, hit it again, hit it one more time. Suddenly I feel like James Brown. So that's probably a good place to walk off the stage and someone throw a cape over my shoulders. Let's move on.
Uncle Mark,
Here I am.
you're always there.
Yeah, I'm always like I'm ever present.
Is that how I summon you? If I just say Uncle Mark 3 times, will you just pop up and say, here I am?
Yeah, say Uncle Mark 3 times into a wine glass. And I appear.
Which I often do. So, there are certain conversations that you and I would like to have, but we are not qualified.
That is almost every conversation we have anyway.
We don't, yes, we're definitely not qualified to talk about anything
Almost anything.
of value.
Right. Which is why we talk about religion.
Right. Hey, bada boom. But you've brought a friend into our studio.
Yes, as we promise in the preamble of our show, we have experts of all kinds that we like to bring in. And we've brought in studio today a friend of ours who is Tori Williams Douglass.
Hi, Tori.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And we're gonna get to kind of the meat of what this topic is. It's kind of a how-to.
Yeah.
It's a continuation of a couple how-tos.
Yeah. I mean, we need to have lots of discussions. We need to continue a lot. There's much to delve into in this world.
And much to delve into with this particular subject. But our friend Tori is an ex-evangelical from that universe, and we just
Sorry about that, Tori.
It's okay. I've had a lot of therapy. It's fine.
Good times, all good times. But let's for those of you who don't know who she is, she's a big presence on Twitter and a lot of fun most of the time there. So, let's talk a little bit about your story before we get into the meat of the matter.
The Tori story,
The Tori story,
if you will.
Oh, I love that. That's so rad. I might have to run with that, actually.
It's yours.
Thank you. So I grew up Portland, Oregon. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My parents, like you mentioned, are super evangelical, conservative, like political activists, actually, in Oregon. So I was.
What kind of political activists? They're like the
for conservative causes,
Okay.
like in the state of Oregon, which is a lost cause, but
Which is great. At least they're not working
mean-
where it might do some good or some damage or whatever.
yeah. I'm like, we've got this like blue wall on the West Coast. It's like holding steady. I'm really hoping that sticks. So my mom was like an anti-abortion activist. In the state, and working with some like national groups in the 1990s to try to get abortion outlawed in the state of Oregon.
Right, sure.
So, that was kind of my background, was just church all day, every day, basically. Like I was homeschooled, and went to church all the time. Wasn't allowed to like read books that weren't explicitly Christian. Wasn't allowed to listen to music that wasn't explicit. Like I didn't even realize there was like country music was a thing. Like
I think you're lucky.
Yeah, you did well there. Yeah. There's other things that you didn't manage to get that may have hurt you, but that's pretty good.
So me missing out on all the like 1980s like country music is is cool.
I
Is
think
that
the
okay?
country, but if you missed out on like 80s pop and punk and stuff like that, that
Yeah,
sucks.
Yeah,
I missed
that's-
out on everything.
that's less fun.
I didn't realize there were things that you could write songs about other than Jesus.
Right. Right.
So yeah, good times.
Now there's another aspect to your growing up
Yes.
that we need to mention so that we can talk about what we're going to talk about.
For context, yeah. So I grew up in a mixed race family. My dad is black and my mom is white, and so growing up in Portland, I was very much like the odd human out, because that was just. It wasn't unheard of, but like nobody knew what to do with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when I would, we'd go to swim lessons or like the library, and the other kids be like, "So are you Mexican?" Like they had no frame of
Really?
reference.
Was it that
yeah.
rare in Portland?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
They had no frame of reference for like who I was. Portland's the whitest major city in the country, so it just wasn't a terribly diverse place.
So
especially
you feel
back
perfectly
then.
comfortable here in Salt Lake City then?
Oh, absolutely. I was like, oh, I'm home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because
that
we're
was
the whitest non-major city. Medium city.
Secondary.
go.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
classification
Yeah.
is, but
There you
fuck
go.
it. We're white as fuck
Yeah.
and feeling fine.
Yeah, it's basically white people and the Utah Jazz here. So
Yeah,
anyway.
no, I noticed that as soon as I got off the airplane, actually. I was like, oh, I am right at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like a very weird kind of aspect to my growing up. And this race was kind of a non-issue, right? Like my parents kind of took tried to go the colorblind approach, which doesn't work.
Which
if
is
you're
not the same as
not
a
a white-
non-racist approach.
Oh, no, it's not anti-racist at all. It's just like...
Colorblindness is its own form of racism.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really is, because it's like, well, it gives you a reason to overlook or not examine like institutional, structural, systemic problems, because
Right.
everybody's just an individual. And it's also a lie, right?
Right.
Like nobody walks into like a meeting with Oprah and is like, what race are you?
Right.
Right.
I can't tell.
That's the old Colbert joke.
Yes.
I don't see race, so you're sitting in front of me, but I have no idea what you are. Yeah.
Right. I don't see race. Everyone at my country club tells me I'm white.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that my parents really tried to like, race is not an issue anymore. Like
Wow.
everybody, I mean, like crazy things. Like I would bring it up like in the car on the way to church of like, do people think that it's weird that we're like mixed? And my parents are like, oh no, like all the white people go and tan because they want to be the same color you are. Which is like.
You're lucky.
And I have no frame of reference for this whatsoever, because literally all of the information in my life has been controlled and like come through a single source, which
Right.
is like my parents.
Right. So you were in a way you were very isolated with them in that you
Extremely.
you were homeschooled. I don't know how much of a social group outside of your church.
Very
You had-
like, none.
so you-
really. I mean, a couple neighbor kids. That was it.
So was your dad the only black person you knew?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't have any. I didn't have any black friends until I was in college.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So and your parents, it seems to me that what was going on is your parents weren't trying to raise you in a race neutral way. They were trying specifically to raise you not black. Is that right?
Yeah.
They were trying.
I would say that's true.
They
Yeah.
were, and they prevented you from any connection with that
Mm-hmm.
American story.
Including, as we were talking earlier, including your dad's family.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. So I
weren't-
met my dad's mom one time. Never met his siblings, never met his dad.
Wow.
Yeah. No, we were very much kept away from like that side of the family. I mean, even like the intentionality of like, my parents met in Europe because my dad was in the army. And like the intentionality of like, well, we're not gonna settle like where my dad's family is. We're gonna settle where my mom's family was, which was in Oregon, which is very white.
Wow.
So
So you're dropped into that backdrop. You're dropped into Whiteville, only exposure to white people, white. And then you go out into the world and discover that there are other people who look very different than white folk, and who live a different experience, which gets us to what we wanted to talk about,
Right.
which is talking to people about, because suddenly there's, as it turns out, even if you're raised to believe that there's that the whole race thing is over and we don't have to worry about it, it ain't.
It's not true.
Yeah.
And it was a fiction, and it was a
Yes.
complete fiction. And even well-meaning people that believe there is the possibility of kind of a race-neutral approach to life and pretend they're operating in that space, that's a fiction. And so kind of what we wanted to talk about today, when we said this was a how-to with our friend Tori, Paige was on last year, our therapist friend, who talked about how to survive Thanksgiving in one piece without too much boat rocking.
Yeah, with your Christian or with your religious relatives,
Or your stubborn, whatever their fucking stubbornness is, those relatives. Right. And then a few weeks ago, just recently, we talked about confronting religious people in their spaces, if that's something that you need to do, and when that's appropriate, and how you might approach that. And this, I think, is kind of a follow-on to both of those, because we're in a political moment right now where in this country it probably is a time that we start approaching people that we have differences with in our families so a little more directly. And so anyway,
and some of our listeners may have family members, strangely, who are racists.
Here's what I would say: all of our listeners have family members who are racist.
Right,
100%.
100%.
400%.
So let's get into that subject a little bit. That the holidays are coming up.
People are going to be talking to their families, and we're following hard on the heels of people taking knees during anthems, and people, and there are plenty of conversations that are going to crop up. Somebody is going to get so mad about something, and
they're going to get a couple drinks in them, and then they're going to feel liberated to talk about whatever that fucking thing is.
And some of our listeners and some of us in this room may want to say something when that subject comes up. So
let's get into it.
That's awkward. That's hard. It's scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're a fan. You're a proponent of this conversation.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think that difficult conversations are what move us forward as a society anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think
is that a goal?
They're really.
Are we supposed to move forward?
Well, at this point, I think make America great again.
How about stop the backward?
Yeah,
right. Stop the backward.
It's not even forward. It's just stop the fucking slide.
Can we stop moving in reverse?
Where's that hat?
Yeah.
Stop the backward.
Progress has been demonstrated clearly, has a reverse gear.
Make America great ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
For once.
For once. So yeah, I think, if I'm not wrong, Tori, your position is it's more than just you ought to think about this. It is, you really have a moral responsibility to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's something to be said for those survival mode, just keep your head down, kind of pray for daylight sort of situations. And I absolutely understand and respect those situations as well. But I think that in terms of people with privilege who have, ample opportunity to have a sit down conversation, in the kitchen, at the dining room table, watching football or whatever, to confront. And I'm not talking about being antagonistic, right? I'm not talking about why do you think that cops should be able to just kill anyone. You don't have to be confrontational about it. These conversations will just, like you said, Mark, they'll just come up.
Yeah. Because literally, football will be on TV.
Right.
And
exactly.
somebody's going to kneel, and that's going to catalyze the whole fucking...
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And
people will expose themselves in that moment as...
Yeah, they show their true colors, so to speak.
Right.
So, and I think that, this is what I kind of encourage people to do on Twitter, if you have that privilege, right? If you're not in a space where you're just trying to survive to like till you can get somewhere where you can get on your feet, you don't have to depend on these folks.
Right.
Then yeah, like it's really important to push back on those comments, that mindset. And again, like not in an antagonistic way, I think that it should be done in good faith with the intention of having a productive conversation. But when those comments are made, to be able to push back and say like, what did you say? Why did you say that? Like, what is the problem? And like make people defend their positions very clearly, because you're not going to win every conversation, right? You're not going to win every argument, but like making people go on the record as like, yeah, this is what I think about like kneeling, like it's disrespectful, whatever. And it's like, well, why do you think this is disrespectful? But you're fine with like, somebody wearing an American flag, like on their bikini or whatever,
right.
Yeah. So it's like, who decides what's respect and what isn't? Right. And who decides what forms of protest are acceptable and which aren't? So like, again, having a good faith conversation and using your privilege in that way to push back on these kind of like negative stereotypes and unchallenged mindsets, because, people are living kind of in bubbles, right? It's like, there's a lot of projection about like, oh, liberals and safe spaces and yada, yada, yada. But it's like, if you dare push back on like a conservative's worldview, they're going to lose it. Right, because they're so accustomed to being comfortable,
right,
to being unchallenged in specific places,
right.
And when they are, that can really rile them up.
I wanted to get back to because we sort of made the claim that it is a responsibility. There's an obligation to have this conversation, and I want to talk about why that is the case.
I think that again. Please, like, be safe. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be homeless, right? Kicked out. Like,
right.
And everyone has to assess these things
exactly
for themselves.
Like, it's not a one size fits all, and I would never try to claim that it is.
But if you're a stable adult,
yes, I think there is a moral responsibility to push back on, if you are able to push back on these kinds of comments, these kinds of mindsets, because they cause like demonstrable, quantifiable harm. Right?
Just because the mindset itself.
Well, these people also vote.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like, they're the ones that show up, to vote.
Yeah.
Especially, like, on, like, non-presidential election years. Like,
right.
They're the ones showing up at the midterms.
Right.
And I think, like I said, like, I think that it's, if you have privilege, and you aspire to allyship, or you aspire to be a decent person, you can't let conversations and comments and these thought processes like slide.
Right. And here you are, a black woman sitting in the room with two white guys saying this. Because of your situation, I feel like you would be very quick in those moments to say something, because what choice do you really have? I
don't have a choice.
You don't have a
I'm
choice.
going to defend my existence.
Right. What we're talking about is people like me and Dan, or people who have this massive well of privilege, this massive account of privilege that they may not even know they have, that they don't ever fucking use they don't do anything with it.
Right.
So spend some on doing something like this.
Well, and it's and I get, there's this thing
it's
where
for us to do,
where it's scary because, this is my family. I don't need to rock a boat here. I just want to have a good time and then go home. And if they just make one comment, I'll just let it slide or whatever. But there's good reason not to let it slide.
Yeah, I think so. Because again, it's like you're talking about people. First of all, you're confronting people with privilege to start, right? And they're expending their privilege to make life literally harder for like
people with less.
Yeah, people of color, the poor, like immigrants,
gay people.
Exactly. So they're actively working to make life harder for us,
right,
using whatever privilege they have. So I think that, again, like you're saying, like you also maybe have like this stash of unused privilege that like you can access to kind of push back, to show up, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of folks are used to not having, these ideas challenged. And I have to think back to like Japanese internment. I have to think back to Jim Crow. And it's like, I mean, that was a bigger deal then, I think. You know, you're having Thanksgiving dinner and it's like, well, I don't want colored people using my water fountain.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, I don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is dehumanization.
Right.
Right? And
Yeah.
you don't want to rock the boat for people's like, dignity.
You're allowing someone in your family to make an entire group of human beings less than themselves.
And doing it so fucking casually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, with no risk. They're taking no risk to say these terrible things. And you know, if you're at a Thanksgiving or a Christmas dinner or whatever, and there's a whole group of family, what those people are doing in that moment is performative, right? It's a performative, provocative. Why do they kneel? You know, anything like when they say something like that, they're kind of tossing a chip onto the table, and there's a lot of people watching, you know, and so what happens next, I think, is quite important, and you can't let that stand because the people in that room have to see if they're neutral, if they agree, if they disagree, they have to see that challenged. You know, I fully believe that.
And so give us an example of what this can look like. Let's just say that Uncle so and so, not one of these uncles, obviously, because
Your
we're
racist uncle,
'cause we're-
which is not
we're woke
Uncle
as
Mark
fuck
and
over here.
Uncle Dan.
More racist than Uncle Mark and Uncle Dan.
yeah, even more so
Yes.
than we.
We're all on a journey and we're working on it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Say one who isn't working on it.
Yeah.
He's
Yes.
not working on it at all, and he's like, damn football players should all be fired if they can't just do their job and stand for the flag and respect the goddamn veterans and all the things. What would your version of challenging Uncle? I almost said Uncle Tom.
Uncle Joey.
That was a very fraught moment just then. Anyway,
Kanye. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that those like that's a comment that should be pushed back on. For me, one thing that I like, this individual is problematic. So, but I heard Tim Wise one time say that like a good comment when you hear something that you find unacceptable is because oftentimes it'll be muttered or just said like in jest and
It's a trial balloon, right?
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so to just say like, oh, what did you say?
interesting.
Make them repeat it.
Right.
Make them clarify.
Yeah.
And okay, why is this specifically like a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Why is protesting police brutality not okay to you? Like, what about the First Amendment? Because that's what they're going to pull up, right?
Right,
You know, like, or it's like, they, you know, these football players, like, they can protest whatever, like, off the clock. It's like, okay, why does it have to be off the clock? Like, they're being forced into performative patriotism.
Right.
Yeah.
So why is that okay, right? Performative patriotism being required as part of your job. Why is that acceptable?
Right.
But like peaceful protest isn't
Right.
in that same context, right? And, you know, just ask them questions, make them defend their positions, because you're not going to change someone's mind in one conversation.
No.
Right? I mean, especially people who are really digging in right now.
And
in
if
this moment.
if you start the argument, if you start the screaming match,
right, that's not going to get anywhere.
it's going to be tricky. I mean, you have the right to do that too if you want to, but just that's definitely not going to make I mean, the goal can't be I need you to be not racist right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, like we've talked about, this is a process. This is a journey. Everybody's on it. I know I grew up around only white people. Like I have anti-black bias that I have to check in my own brain. Like still.
Well, I mean, we were talking earlier, even your black dad
Right.
was keeping you away from black people.
Right.
So yeah, of course that's what you learned. That's what you grew up
Yeah,
with.
exactly. Like I learned white supremacy, that white people were better, that they knew how to dress, how to talk, how to act, how to like make the rules so that we could all live in this civil society. And weren't we all blessed that they did this great thing for us?
You're welcome.
Thank you. Oh.
But getting back to when we were talking about, you know, the screaming match or whatever, you know, look, as we were saying downstairs, you are not responsible for anybody's reaction.
Right. No.
Your responsibility, our responsibility, is to make it clear that that behavior is not acceptable to you.
Yeah.
That attitude is not acceptable to you. They can still go off and be racist all day. They're going to do whatever they're going to do.
Yep.
They can turn it into a screaming match. But again, I think saying those things, talking about who gets to protest and which way, for instance, is a provocative act. So they've started this situation.
Right.
They're the ones poking the bear, feeling totally free to do so.
Yes, swimming around in their privilege as
absolute impunity.
Right. And so, again, for those of us with privilege to spend some of it saying, not cool, questioning them, and then they're going to do what they want, and it may explode, it may blow up, and you know what? It might fucking be worth it in some circumstances.
Yeah.
Right? It may be okay to ruin a dinner. The point isn't that every dinner should be fucking amazing,
right,
and perfect, and everybody just shut up and get along.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when you're dealing with issues, like, to me, this is like a moral issue, right? Like, this is my life we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I'm at greater risk for all of these systemic issues, right? So it's like, sure, like a cop could come and kill a white guy, and that happens, unfortunately, far too frequently. Right. But it's not, there's not like the racial bias of like, we know by like, because of studies and brain scans, like we know that like racial bias is like literally hardwired into like our neurons because we see so much anti-black imagery.
Sure.
Our entire lives in this country.
Right.
And I would have, just to point out, I would have no qualms yelling at a police officer. As a white guy, like,
you can do that.
If I see a police officer that I think is doing something bullshit, I'll confront him and I'll yell and I'll whatever if I need, if
make a scene,
if I feel like it.
Yeah, and you can do that because you have enough privilege.
And yet a black guy can just be chilling and then get arrested. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
it's an entirely different set of rules.
Yeah, a black guy knows not to make eye contact.
Yeah,
with a cop,
and even that won't protect him necessarily.
No, absolutely
so,
not.
Like, there's like, it's a different world.
Yeah, it is.
We need, and until that is not the case, we have there is a societal, moral
imperative.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm sorry, we have obligations in this world,
right? And the point being that people of color and these vulnerable groups in our country are defending themselves every fucking day. It's time.
Out of sheer survival.
We step up.
Right.
It's time the rest of us step up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And don't rely on your black in-law or
right.
Asian relative to do the fucking heavy lifting in this circumstance. It's on us.
Yeah.
Who are not really at risk in the same ways.
Right. And I think it's important to point out too, because people would ask this all the time. It's like, oh, what would you do if you were alive during like, the civil rights movement or whatever? It's like, well, here's your chance.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
You're alive during now.
Yeah.
So, have at it. Let's see what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So it's like, ask yourself that question, because I think a lot of the time people with privilege think that they would do the right thing. But then when it comes right down to it, when it actually is going to cost you something, even if it's just a ruined meal and like everybody's fine, the next weekend.
Right.
I think that, like, to be able to to look yourself in the eye, honestly, and say like, I didn't use like a small portion of my privilege to stand up for like oppressed people, or, to stand up for the rights of like black people, or whatever the situation is, whatever conversation it is that comes up.
Well, and there's also this important thing about the visibility of this idea. You know what I mean? Like, one of the things that has been so important in our society is when gay people decided they needed to be visible.
Yeah.
They needed to come out of the closet. You know what I mean? And once they started talking, and once they started saying, look, there are gay people that in your neighborhood, in your family.
And took great risk.
At tremendous risk for themselves.
Yeah.
Things started changing slowly for gay people, and now everything's totally fine for them. So
everything's fine.
So, like, the visibility of these opinions, me as a straight white man, if I can, just in a moment when someone feels comfortable saying some bullshit racist thing to me, if I can just say, I'm really not okay with that.
Yep.
And that will make a difference. That will get them thinking differently. That will get them, even if they don't give up their racist views or whatever, it changes how the world works.
I would say also that it's to me, it's less about that person you're directly confronting than it is about the people watching.
That's true, too.
That's seeing you're taking a stance and being decent and taking a risk, even if it's trifling. You're taking a risk to do something that's right. And I want to talk just a second about how the civil rights movement has been kind of airbrushed and adapted to kind of white comfort in this country. Like this white sainthood of Martin Luther King Jr. And don't forget that as great a man as he was, what he did was make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
What even the most peaceful warriors in any of these rights movements did was make people uncomfortable, right? They sat at the wrong lunch counter. They drank from the wrong fountain. They did.
Yeah, they sat in the wrong seat on the bus.
That's right.
And it's like, okay, well, this is the peaceful protest that like we're supposed to aspire to.
Right.
How is that different than what Colin Kaepernick and these other football players are doing? Like, you say you want peaceful protest, right? You say you don't want people shutting down the freeways, which, the civil rights activists shut down the fucking freeway.
Right.
Yeah.
That's been scrubbed. Like, there were riots, there were protests. Like, that kind of gets scrubbed out of like the history books.
Yeah.
And
like,
peaceful protest it means non-physically violent protest. It doesn't mean that you have peace at the meal. It doesn't mean that you have calm, that only calm will.
It means
will
non-violent. It doesn't mean non-confrontive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so don't
I think
forget.
we conflate those two, right? Like
Right.
we conflate like having a peaceful meal with like, somehow like I don't know. We kind of aspire to this like, well, I can't if there's any conflict or any tension at all, then it's not peace. And it's like, well, that's a false peace.
And let's remember that again, the person who makes this comment, the person who says the thing, the racist thing, the whatever thing, that's the person who has broken the peace.
Yes.
It is not you.
Yes.
Right.
That's the person who has done the first violent act.
Yeah.
And it is a psychic violence.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
do that. So defense of yourself and of the people, of people that you care about.
And that you may not even know.
Even if you don't know them. Yeah. I mean, caring about humanity is caring.
Right.
And and defense of those people is not
Is not a violent.
is not committing a violent act.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm circling back to the civil rights movement. That was derided as violent and
Right.
inflammatory, right? Because and white America, the majority of white America, you can go back and look at the polling on this. Like they were like, what are these people complaining about?
Right.
Yeah.
We're like, everything's fine. Like everything that we see is fine. It's great.
They've
Like,
got their own
let's-
colleges now. They can do anything they want.
Exactly. And I think that like there's a lack of empathy, there's a lack of understanding, but I think that when you look at this moment where we are right now in the historical context and like doing some comparison, it's like the sentiment is basically identical, right? Like the civil rights movement, like I think 1 in 3 white Americans approved of the civil rights movement.
Wow.
And it turns out 1 in 3 white Americans approves of like Black Lives Matter existing.
Wow.
So I mean, it's like the parallels don't stop. Like they just kind of go on forever.
Right.
And the narrative, like the lines that like people, like the people that are opposed to these movements use, like they're exactly the same as they were in the 1960s. Like 2018.
Right.
They're using the exact same lines that they were using on Dr. King and Malcolm X.
Right. These are comfortable people with privilege wanting to dictate the terms of how vulnerable groups engage for their rights. They want to say, why do you have to do it this way?
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
do you have to kneel? You're too loud. You're too quiet. You're too you're too in our face.
Here's what we'll do. We'll create a small little room over here
Right.
that you guys can yell and scream and be all mad about your race things.
Yeah.
And we'll do and then bring us the minutes of it.
Yeah.
And we'll sort of scan that. briefly.
Yeah, the comfortable don't get to dictate how people fight for their rights.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think all we're saying is you don't have to punch Uncle Joe in the nose. You just
Please-
have to
please
make.
don't do that.
You just have
That's
to make him
assault.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes. Please, let's not.
Let's avoid assaulting other human beings.
How about this? Why don't we just say make racism uncomfortable?
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. Yes.
Just make it fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
We've solved that.
we've
Thank you.
solved racism on the How to Heretic
Moving
kids.
on.
She knows our show.
I think Tori may be a fan. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
not- I don't want to give away the game, but
Okay. Well, kids, this has not ended racism, but this has been a delightful conversation. Tori, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you guys are so awesome. I'm
and if-
so happy right now.
and if people want to find you out in the world online, where do they look for you?
Oh yeah, on the interwebs. So I'm usually can be found on Twitter at Tori Glass. I'm also on Instagram occasionally. I posted a picture of me and Brigham Young. It's very close to my heart. I'm waiting for him to come down off that statue and blood atone me for existing. And also, I'm at toryglass.com if you want to check out like some of the essays that I've written. So yeah,
Great.
Cool. Well, thank
Awesome.
you so much for sharing this time with us. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you guys.
All right.
You're the best.
Bye.
Moving on.
Bye.
Well, dear friends, that is it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you've framed some random neighbor in your small town for murder that never happened, you can tell us about it on our voicemail at 903-88-HOW, which is 903-884-6986. It is an anonymous tip line, but that's not so much true on Twitter.
But we don't follow through with it or anything.
You can find us there at HowToHeretic and on Facebook.
Yes. Hey, thanks again to our patrons. You are the money that makes us go.
Thanks again to Cody Layton, who is the editor that makes us go.
And thank all of you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.